And, I do like to use Prodigy as kind of a jumping off point because I think it comes back to that idea of what's the point of me learning this? Because the way a lot of math curriculum is structured is that you get this long explanation of a problem and then you're supposed to solve a bunch of problems. But if you start with a problem, like a challenge, and then you pull in different resources to support answering that problem, it can give you a lot more meaning to what you're learning.
Absolutely. So if you have kind of those three categories of tools, and you can pick the curriculum that you like the best, you can pick the video lessons that you like the best, as Manisha said, that actually resonates with your particular child. I find that combination can really help accelerate your homeschool practice.
And Prodigy
One
can also be
last
really useful if you do decide to go with a tutor. Tutors can be expensive. There are free tutoring tools like schoolhouse.world. We also pair families with free tutors if they can't afford it. But if you want to find like an inexpensive college tutor, it can be really useful to give them Prodigy to provide them with a structure for their lessons. So to make sure you're not just bringing in these random worksheets and jumping around to all these concepts, but you're actually following a path. Prodigy can give you that path, and then the tutor can kind of fill in the blanks. And it can be nice even having an older homeschooler kid. If your kids are just really not communicating around math with you, it just happens, and it's totally fine to bring in someone. Maybe you could teach writing to another kid and they could teach your kid math. But we found with Mastery Hour, when we were just kind of throwing the tutors into the lion's den and helping with math, it didn't really go very well. But then we brought in Prodigy to support them and give them some structure and just really changed our progress quite a bit.
amazing. One last thing that I'll show you on the Prodigy platform here is something called the student activity report. So you can get to it by clicking on the reports tab here. And if you click view report on the student activity report, I'll be able to see Adam B's activity here. In this case, I'm doing it for the last 90 days. And you can see that he's answered a lot of questions on Prodigy. But if I go into grade 3, for example, here, and I go into fractions, I can see what questions he is answering here. And I will have to zoom into this one to see what the question is. And you can actually get a preview of what he might be, specifically what he might be learning within Prodigy. The other thing that I can use this for is in the cases that I can see that in grade 1, grade 3 skills, he's doing really well, very high accuracy. He's starting to get into grade 8. And Adam's actually not a grade 8 student. He's a grade 6 student here. So he's starting to get a little bit more advanced in the Prodigy curriculum, which is fantastic. You can see where he might be having difficulty. And in this case, he's having some challenges with the Pythagorean theorem. So if you want to take a look here at the questions that specifically that he might be struggling with, this provides you as a parent the opportunity to see the question, and you might be able to just pop this on your screen and do it as a kind of impromptu lesson with your child.
Yeah, Heather had a really good question in the chat kind of about how the adaptive learning works, how the students automatically guided, even if you don't provide them with specific problems or topics.
Yes, that is a very good question, Heather. So essentially how the algorithm works, and I think I have a slide here that might explain it a little bit better. So let me go here really quickly. So your child is playing the game by default. They're obviously getting math questions. So the first thing that they do in terms of the curriculum is the placement test. After they complete the placement test, which typically takes like 1 to 2 sessions, it's not a set number of questions that are in the placement test. It could be 20 questions. It could be 50 questions that they have to answer. It depends on how far they're progressing through the curriculum. Then they're put on that adaptive path, and that's where we adapt. The way that the assignments come into your question is the assignments take precedence over the other 2 things. So if you have an active assignment, there is no way to avoid that. And that's also the first questions that they see the next time that they log into the game. If you don't have an assignment, that's when they go back to kind of the adaptive path. So that is how the curriculum works. A lot of parents use the assignments as kind of sneaky assessments for your child. So they don't know that they're doing the questions that you have assigned them specifically. There's nothing to indicate to say, hey, your parent has given you, 10 questions on fractions. But that is the first 10 questions that they will see when they get onto the game. And after that, They just move back to where they left off on the adaptive path. Hope that helps answer your question. Awesome. Fantastic.
Cool. Well, we really want to give you guys a little space to ask more questions. And I don't know if you feel comfortable turning your cameras on and asking us, or if you want to put them in the chat. These questions are so nuanced and so dependent on individual children. Is there anyone who wants to troubleshoot and bounce up ideas with us? Okay, if you're trying to get up your courage, I actually have some of your. Okay, yeah. Okay, so Heather mentioned a new science path. Want to.
Yes, that's a great question. So, science is a brand new subject that we've added. So, to be honest, it is a little bit less of a fulsome curriculum versus our math curriculum. For math, we have almost every skill, grades 1 through 8 for the math curriculum, and it is a member only feature. So, if you are a premium member on Prodigy, you can get access to the science curriculum. And when you log into your student's account, it'll ask you if you want to learn math or science, essentially. And if you say science, you'll be able to get the science questions within Prodigy there. And then Kara asked, does it matter what grade I technically label my child with initially? It does, because that gives us a bit of a starting point. So when we do our placement test, we actually consider that grade, but we don't take it as a concrete kind of line in the sand. So what we do is we actually start with questions a couple grade levels below to see if your students might have mastered those already or might still be having difficulty. And then we try to work them up to the grade level that you've selected. And then we try to work them even a little bit beyond that to see where the right place to start them is. And after that, obviously, the adaptive algorithm takes over.
Yeah. So, is there a benefit to increasing it once they progress to a new level? Or, for example, a child who's really gifted but might have some gaps in what they've learned before, what would you recommend?
So, Kara, if you're talking about the grade override, that's a little bit different than what I described. So, there is an option to override Prodigy's adaptive algorithm on your parent dashboard. And what that does is it essentially just keeps your students on that grade. So if you apply a grade override of grade 5, they're only going to get grade 5 questions. We don't put them up to grade 6. We don't pull them down to grade 4. That's all they get. That's kind of like you just want them to work on grade 5. So you've specified that. What I had referred to earlier on is when a child first comes into the game, we ask, what grade are you in? And they can select grade 3. And that's what's the starting point for a placement test. So I would actually recommend not using the grade override if you want our adaptive algorithm to take over. But if you really specifically want them to work on, only grade 6 questions, then you can use that grade override.